Kuala Lumpur. That's yet to come, but right now also here Ukrainian officials have not commented on it. Only right now, the only real source right now is coming from Russia, and that's a civil aviation expert who said that it didn't enter Russian airspace when it should have.
Scott, we've got some more detail on this. The Interfax news agency now saying the plane was shot down with a ground-to-air missile. How they're confirming that, of course, we don't know. But just tell us more at the moment about the tense standoff that there is, and paint the picture of what's going on around where you are.
Sure, yeah. Over the last couple of days, we've had a couple of aircraft shot down, Ukrainian military aircraft that Ukraine has blamed Russia for, because the separatist fighters who have been battling with Ukrainian forces here in eastern Ukraine don't have the sophisticated weapons that could do something like this. And we're talking about these fighter jets that have been brought down over the last several days here in Ukraine. And again, as I mentioned, one as high as 6,500 meters in altitude, which is pretty high. So they've been pointing to that. There's discussions today, accusations today from Ukraine at the United Nations, from Kiev to Moscow, saying that they believe Russia has been behind these attacks, these missile attacks on these airplanes. One, though, they said that took place yesterday on Wednesday was they believe air-to-air missile strike. 2 aircraft on the Russian side of the border, Russian airspace, fired on an aircraft, a Ukrainian military aircraft on this side of the border, brought it down, but they were able to parachute out. So that is something that needs to be considered. But when you look about this area, what's been going on, it's a very tough read to see if these could be connected. But again, you know, it's a very hot area. For them to be able to make those connections that this was in fact shot down, what the Interfax is saying, that is something that, you know, we really need to kind of look through. And we're also hearing that confirmed by civilians in the area that there is an aircraft that is down, confirmed to us, to Al Jazeera. So obviously this is going to be investigated. What kind of official announcement we're going to get either from Malaysia or from here in Ukraine, obviously those are going to be coming out over the coming minutes, the coming hours. But this is a situation, particularly with Malaysian Airlines, this is something where they unfortunately have quite a recent experience with, going into crisis mode, figuring out exactly where the last contact was with this aircraft. Seeing if they can get any details of what that kind of contact was. And it's about 80 kilometers away from where we are here in Donetsk. So again, these facts point to the idea that it might have been, in fact, as it's being said out of Russia, in fact shot down. Who shot it down? Did they know that this was a civilian aircraft? Now, it's been very interesting over the last 10 days that we've been here with this increase of attacks between separatist fighters and Ukrainian army officials. We go out, we've been hearing these stories about airstrikes, we've been hearing these stories about these fighter jets being shot down. So our eyes, as we're doing our reporting, our eyes are on the sky. And it's very easy to tell, if you have a little bit of experience, what altitude and what kind of aircraft some of these might be. And one person in our team actually has an application on his smartphone where you can tell exactly what aircraft are flying overhead. Based on schedules, and also it's a GPS positioning. So for this to happen, it to be shot down like this, it's very curious because anyone with a smartphone can actually see what aircraft are in the area. If someone who's behind the controls of a sophisticated missile system not being able to realize that there's commercial aircraft in the area. Again, these are these answers that are going to be coming out, but what we can confirm, people to Al Jazeera in the area, civilians in the area, only 80 kilometers away from here, there is an aircraft down. But again, how and why it crashed, those are the questions that are going to be, hopefully, some answers coming through over the next couple of hours.
Scott Heidler, they're live in Donetsk. Scott, thank you for all those extra details. And Rory Shallon's now in Moscow. Hi there, Rory. What's Russia saying about the downing of this plane at this stage?
Well, I mean, this is still a very murky situation with lots of details yet to be nailed down. We have been trying to get through to Interfax, the news agency that is responsible for most of the information that is out there about this plane at the moment. The Interfax had a source, and that source was telling them most of the information. I'll reiterate it. A Malaysia Airlines Boeing 777 crashed in Ukraine not far from the Russian border. It was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. It was flying at about 10 kilometers high, so flying at altitude. Never entered Russian airspace, according to the Russians. But Interfax wouldn't tell us the identity of their source, so we're still slightly groping in the dark here, trying to work out what exactly has happened. But of course, the implications of it are huge. As Scott was saying, this is an area that is consumed by conflict, and it's an area where planes have been going down in recent days, but military planes. So for a civil aviation airliner to go down in the same area is obviously a catastrophic event, and something that is going to change this game completely.
And already, Rory, of course, as you've already mentioned, Russia has been denying accusations that it shot down a Ukrainian fighter jet. Of course, Ukrainian authorities say the opposite.
Yes, as I was saying, we have had planes going down in the border area over the last few days. 2 Ukrainian fighter jets went down yesterday, on Wednesday. Ukraine initially said that only one had gone down and pointed the finger at the rebels, the pro-separatist fighters in the area, saying that they were using sophisticated missile systems brought across the border from Russia, and that was what had brought down one of the planes. Then they later said, today in fact, that a second plane went down yesterday that had been shot down by a Russian jet. Now, we had to wait for quite some time for any sort of response from the Russian government to that. Then a couple of hours ago, first of all, we had a denial from Vitaly Churkin, who is Russia's ambassador to the UN, him in New York saying to reporters that Russia had nothing to do with it. Just a few minutes after that, there was also a statement from Russia's defense ministry saying that the accusations from Kiev that Russia had anything to do with the downing of a fighter jet were completely absurd, and that Kiev had no evidence to back that up. Now, Russia has always maintained that it does not have any state involvement, military involvement, in what's going on in Ukraine. It does acknowledge that there may well be Russian fighters there, but it says, and has always said, that those Russian fighters are entirely there under their own initiative. They're not being commanded by Moscow. This is not believed by Kiev, and it's not believed by many in the West as well. As we have seen over the last 24 hours, the US has put new sanctions in place, much more sectoral sanctions against Russia, showing that it thinks that Russia does have a very heavy hand in what's going on in Ukraine at the moment.
Rory Shallon's there live from Moscow. We will continue to bring you the very latest details we have on the downing of that plane in Ukraine. It's a developing situation at the moment, but as I say, we'll bring you all the information we can as we get it. Now, campaigners